All right, here we go. Kinesiology 230. This is chapter 7. And we're talking nutrition concepts and strategies. And we're talking just basic concepts regarding nutrition, some general guidelines. There's not a lot of heavy lifting for this chapter, thank God. So let's get into this. We have to really talk about like scope of practice and like know when it's best to refer clients out to other professionals, especially in Illinois where there are licensing requirements regarding nutrition. You can review diet, you can estimate energy, you can offer generalities and suggestions, but to really understand one's scope of practice and if you can write out a nutritional plan for that person or not, that becomes a whole nother conversation. So let's jump into this, all right? What you really have in this chapter is the understanding of scope of practice, knowing when it's appropriate to offer direction, knowing what information is appropriate to offer, and then being able to compartmentalize that within the context of what you do as a personal trainer or strength and conditioning coach, etc. It's okay to speak in terms of generalities, but to have specifics and write down meal plans, that's probably going to be outside of your scope of practice, and it could potentially open you up to liability, especially if that person becomes ill from your guidance or sick to some degree from your guidance, as we'll talk about a little bit later on. But this little bullet point they have, I think, is quite good. Personal trainers should refer clients to a dietitian when the client has a disease state, such as cardiovascular disease or diabetes, and has a dietary component that might be a little bit beyond the complexity of what you can do and offer as a personal trainer. So there's a key here that you have to understand your own competency to be able to offer good advice. So know your scope of practice. And trainers can be held accountable for negligence, which can result in some type of civil action. And I would look at this, Kapati versus Crunch, coach example, and then Gore article on what is appropriate. So you can link out to these if you just do a control click, and you can read through them. It's just my little sidebar. You won't be quizzed or anything on those, but they're good to know just some examples of like what could actually happen if you provide guidance and your client actually falls ill because of your guidance. So with a nutritional assessment, excuse me, you have dietary intake. You have to have a dietary intake and have data that's derived from that. And you have also the biochemical data that you can use in terms of if somebody does like a blood draw. You have a clinical evaluation as well. So with dietary intake data, it's a simple concept. It's kind of difficult to execute for a number of reasons. It's difficult because people have difficulty remembering what the heck they ate for breakfast, right? And what'd you have for breakfast? I can't even remember. It's only lunchtime. And then when you start to evaluate a person, they may change their eating habits as a result of knowing that they're being evaluated, or they just might completely misrepresent what they're actually eating and not tell you the truth. There are three main types to this, one of which is dietary recall, that's the past 24 hours. The other is diet history, which is kind of their usual eating habits. And then a diet record, which is a 3-day log. And I would urge you to commit some space in your memory to those because you're going to be asked somewhere down the road regarding those. The book has a test question on this, and they list the USDA MyPlate recommends that fruits and vegetables should be 25%. It's wrong in the quiz, and I didn't put it in your quiz, but you might see it in the test pool. It should be 50% between fruits and vegetables, but the test question or the quiz question itself is incorrect. But the way the plate is set up, the plate provides a visual for people to see the amount of fruits, the amount of vegetables, 50%, grains, 25%, protein foods, 25%, and dairy. Now, granted, this is optimal for the general population. This changes if you have somebody who is perhaps in a disease state, or somebody who has lactose intolerance, or somebody who perhaps wants to go to a keto diet as opposed to a regular kind of basic diet. So my point to you is this is a generality that's offered through myplate.gov. And when you look at that test question, this is the bullet point here in this kind of, I guess what color that we have, like a mauve color, maybe purple. Make half your plates fruits and vegetables. Just realize on the quiz question, if you happen to see it, it'll list it as 25%, and they want 25% for the answer. It's just incorrect. Let's move on. So nutritional concepts. you want to focus on making healthy food choices. Now, these are kind of like my annotations from years of being in the industry. You guide your clients in making healthy food choices, and these can include a number of different things. You want to have the appropriate number of calories based upon age, sex, height, weight, physical activity, and goals. And then also, you look at this and you go, you want to have foods that are low in saturated fat, low in sodium, and low in added sugars for all the obvious reasons. Want less processed foods, more real or whole foods. And then, you can use spices in place of salt. You can use herbs in place of salt to get to have more seasoning and more flavor in your meals. Grill, broil, roast, or bake is the way to go. You want to go that route as opposed to fried foods. And when I'm asked regarding nutrition, I have several little bullet points that I always touch on. It's about quantity and quality. If the person is eating a ton of food, they may have to make some decisions regarding how much food they eat. If they're making poor food choices, they may have to make decisions about what they're eating, not how much they're eating. Sometimes you come across a person where they're eating a ton of poor quality food, so they have to make a decision regarding one or the other. And I always describe it to my clients, it's like a two-headed monster. You got to take on one than the other for success. You got to eat less cruddy food, or you got to eat just better food and have the same caloric intake instead of trying to like cut calories and eat better food at the same time. It's usually a little bit too daunting for somebody to take on. And when dining out, good choices can be when you're looking at a menu, baked versus fried, grilled versus fried. You choose, like if you're having pasta, red sauce over white, that's usually a pretty safe bet. You go with leaner cuts of steak. You can go with like a petite filet as opposed to a regular ribeye. The marbling is different, so the fat content is different. And then you just get in the habit of setting yourself up to take half of your meal home with you. So the book provides several online resources for calculating and evaluating diet. Let me get myself out of the way here. And what they put in the book is MyFitnessPal, LoseIt.com, Spark People, ChooseMyPlate.gov, which we already kind of took a look at. You could take a few moments to kind of look at those and go over those. You won't be quizzed on them, but they might be good resources for you going forward. I'm going to jump into the next presentation and get going. But just remember, understand and know your scope of practice and operate within that sphere, and you can't go wrong.